When I saw the empty balance on my bank account, I thought there had been a mistake. It had to be. I refreshed the page again and again, until my trembling hands could no longer move the mouse. 0.0, my life's savings. Gone. That money wasn't just numbers on a screen. It was 32 years of labor, widowhood, and sacrifice. It was the roof I built over my son's head, the medicine that kept me alive after 2 surgeries, the hope that I could, maybe, live out the rest of my days in peace. But peace, as I learned, is a luxury a mother cannot afford when her child loses his soul to greed. The bank officer's voice was polite, distant. "Madam, the transfer was authorized through your joint account. By your son, my Adil." I felt the air leave my chest like someone had pulled the life right out of me. He had my signature. Years ago, I had added him as a joint holder, just in case something happened to me. A mother's trust. The biggest mistake of my life. For a moment I just sat there staring at the screen. The date of the transfer was 2 days ago. The amount, every last rupee, had been moved into an account I didn't recognize. And then I saw it on social media, as if life wanted to make sure I saw the knife twist all the way through. There they were, Adil, his wife Sarah, and her mother, smiling in front of the Burj Khalifa. Champagne glasses, designer clothes, the caption ready, family vacation. Dreams come true. Dreams come true, yes they do. But whose dreams? Certainly not mine. When I tell you that something inside me broke that day, I mean it in the quietest way possible. No screaming, no tears, just silence, the kind that fills the house when a storm has already passed through and left everything in ruins. I didn't call him, not at first. I wanted to believe there was some explanation, some misunderstanding. Maybe the bank made an error. Maybe he borrowed it for a few days and would return it. But a mother's heart knows when a child has changed, and mine told me, that day, that I had lost Adil long before I lost my savings. I looked around the house that night, the one I had built after his father died. The one I painted in soft beige, because he said it made him feel calm. His photographs still hung on the wall, his first birthday, his graduation, the day he got his first job. In every picture, he was smiling beside me. But I realized in every picture, I was holding him. He was never holding me. When he finally called me 3 days later, his voice was cold, unfamiliar. "Amy, I needed the money. I'll pay you back when things settle down." "Settle down?" I whispered. "Adil, that was my pension. My life's work," he sighed. "You'll manage. You always do." That sentence, that one sentence sliced deeper than anything else he could have said. Because it wasn't just about money. It was about how little he thought I needed love, care, or respect anymore. Maybe he thought I was too old to feel betrayal. Maybe he believed that age makes you numb. But it doesn't. Age makes you remember everything. It makes you replay every sacrifice you made for a child who now treats you like a burden. That night, I didn't sleep. I walked through the house barefoot, touching the furniture, the photos, the curtains I sewed by hand. It all felt foreign now, as if the moment he betrayed me, my own home had turned into a stranger's house. I made a cup of tea at dawn, sat by the window, and told myself something I never thought I'd say. Maybe motherhood isn't about raising a good son. Maybe it's about surviving a bad one. And that's where my story begins. Not with loss, but with awakening. Because when a mother's trust is stolen, something else is born in its place, a quiet kind of strength. The kind that plans and waits. You know, when I think of Adil as a little boy, it almost feels like I'm remembering someone else's child. Not the man who drained my bank account, not the voice that told me, "You'll manage, Ami," but the small, warm child who used to fall asleep with his head in my lap, tracing circles on my hand until he drifted off. He was my miracle, you see. After 2 miscarriages, the doctor said I'd never be able to carry another child to term. But I prayed. Oh, I prayed harder than I'd ever prayed for anything in my life. And when Adil was born, screaming and perfect, I promised God that I would give him everything I had. And I did. His father, Rahim, was a decent man, quiet, hardworking, but life didn't give him much time. A heart attack took him when Adil was just 10. We had nothing after that, no insurance, no savings. Just a small, rented home and a widow who had to learn how to stand up again. I started sewing clothes for neighbors, then for small shops. I still remember sitting by the dim yellow bulb in our kitchen, patching dresses at midnight while Adel studied in the next room. He'd peek in sometimes and say, "Amy, go to sleep. You're tired." And I'd smile and tell him, "Let me finish this one, beta. Tomorrow you'll have money for your books." I never bought anything for myself. Not new shoes, not gold, not even a decent winter coat. Everything was for him. His education, his clothes, his future. I remember saving coins in a glass jar for his school trip to Marie. When he came back, he hugged me so tightly and said, "You're the best mother in the world." And I believed him. When he finished his degree and got a job at a local firm, I thought my prayers had been answered twice. He used to bring me little gifts. A shawl, sometimes sweets. We'd sit and talk about his work, his dreams. He used to say, "One day, Ami, I'll make enough so you can rest. No more sewing, no more worrying." I would just look at him and think, "I don't need your money, son. I just need your heart to stay kind." But hearts change quietly, like seasons that slip into one another before you realize winter has arrived. It started with small things. He began spending more time on his phone, less at home. When I asked about his day, he'd answer without looking at me. When I'd cook his favorite dishes, he'd eat in silence, scrolling through his screen. Then came her, Sarah. Beautiful, yes. Educated, confident, the kind of girl mothers dream for their sons, if they only see the surface. When he brought her home the first time, she was polite. Almost too polite. She called me, Auntie, even after I told her gently, "You can call me Ami, beta." She smiled and said, "Maybe later." "Auntie, I'm still getting used to things." I told myself it was nerves. That she'd warm up. But deep down, something in her eyes felt distant, like she was looking through me, not at me. Adel changed after the marriage. He stopped asking how my day was. He began complaining about small things. The food, the noise, the bills. He said, "Amy, you should move to a smaller place. We need some privacy now." Privacy. That word felt like a knife. I had lived my entire life for him. And now, I was the disturbance. I did move out eventually, but I didn't say anything. I just packed my few belongings and rented a tiny flat on the edge of town. I used my savings to pay the deposit. Smiling through the pain because that's what mothers do. We hide the bleeding so our children can walk safely over the ground. Still, I never stopped helping him. When his wife's mother fell ill, I gave them 50,000 rupees from my savings. When they wanted to start a small business, I signed the documents because Sarah's mother's name didn't look good for bank approval. Adel told me, "Amy, you're the foundation of everything. We'll make you proud." I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe that the boy I raised would never betray me. But little things began to add up. He stopped visiting unless he needed something. He began addressing me like a formality. "Amy, please sign this." "Amy, can you transfer that?" He no longer hugged me when he left. Just a quick, "Allah Hafiz," without looking back. Sometimes I'd call him in the evening, just to hear his voice. He'd answer, annoyed. "Amy, I'm busy right now. Can I call you later?" But the call never came. And then, the last time I saw him before the betrayal, he came to my flat, dressed sharply, smelling of expensive cologne. He sat across from me, his leg bouncing impatiently. He said, "Amy, I need your help with some paperwork for a joint account. It's just for convenience, you know, in case something happens." I looked at his face, so confident, so sure of himself. And I thought, maybe this is love. Maybe he just wants to take care of me. So I signed. And I smiled as I handed him the papers. And he kissed my forehead and said, "You're the only one who understands me." I can still feel that kiss, cold as a coin pressed into my skin. You never know, in that moment, that you're signing away your peace. That what feels like love is actually the opening line of betrayal. And now, when I think back, I remember so many small warnings I ignored. The way he flinched when I called him my little boy. The way Sarah's mother once said, laughing, "Oh, Adel is so generous." He'll take care of 2 families now. 2 families. I didn't understand then what she meant. But I do now. They weren't just building their future together. They were building it on top of mine. And as I sit here telling you this, I can still smell the fabric from those nights I used to sew by hand, imagining a better life for us both. It's almost poetic, isn't it? That the same hands that built his life were the ones that signed it away. But what they didn't know, what they never imagined, was that an old woman's silence isn't surrender. Sometimes silence is the soil, where a different kind of justice begins to grow. After that day at the bank, when I discovered my account empty, I couldn't bring myself to speak to anyone. Not the bank officer, not my neighbor, not even God. I just sat on my bed, the one with the faded pink sheets Adel had bought me years ago, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly, like time mocking me for being such a fool. It wasn't the money that broke me. It was what it meant. He had taken not just my savings, but my trust, my dignity, my motherhood, and made them currency for his own comfort. For days, I didn't eat properly. My stomach couldn't hold anything. My hands trembled when I tried to sew. Every time the phone buzzed, my heart jumped, hoping it was him apologizing. But it never was. Then one evening my phone finally rang. It was Adel. I took a deep breath, steadying my voice. "Hello, Amy," he said casually. "I heard you called the bank. Why would you do that? You're making things complicated." My chest tightened. "Ail, you took everything. You didn't even tell me. That was my pension. Beta." He sighed, like a man tired of reasoning with a child. "I told you, Ami, it's temporary. I'm investing it. You'll get double back soon." "Investing," I whispered. "Without asking me. Please don't make this dramatic." He snapped. "You always overreact. I'm doing this for us? For us?" My voice cracked. "Then why am I sitting here alone, counting pennies to pay rent while you're posting vacation pictures?" There was silence on the line. Then a sharp breath. "You saw that?" "Yes," I said softly. Everyone did. He didn't apologize. He didn't even try. He just said, coldly, "Amy, you've always been too emotional. It's money. Don't make it bigger than it is." That was the first time I hung up on my son. And it felt like cutting off a piece of my own flesh. Days turned into weeks. I tried to go on with life. To keep my dignity intact, I took on extra sewing work, even though my eyes hurt and my back screamed with pain. I told people I was fine. But inside, something was dying slowly. Every night, I replayed our conversations, every word, every tone, trying to understand where I went wrong. Did I love him too much? Did I forgive too easily? Or did I just raise a man who never learned what love really meant? Then one afternoon, there was a knock at my door. It was Sarah. She stood there in designer sunglasses, holding her phone like a shield. Behind her, a shiny white car idled on the street. "Assalamu alaikum, auntie," she said. "Wo alaikum assalam," I replied, confused. She walked in without waiting for permission, looking around my small flat like it was a museum exhibit. "You live here now?" she asked, her voice filled with mild disgust. "Yes," I said quietly. "It's small, but it's enough for me." She laughed softly. "Well, Adel and I were just passing by. We thought we should check on you. You haven't been answering his calls." "Because I have nothing left to say," I said. Her expression changed. A smirk tugged at her lips. "You know, you should be proud of him. He's working hard. He's building something big. He's not a child anymore." "I didn't raise him to be heartless either," I replied. For a moment, her smile vanished. Then she stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You gave him everything, didn't you? All your love, all your money. What did you expect? For him to stay tied to you forever?" I stared at her, my pulse racing. "I expected respect." She chuckled. "Respect doesn't pay bills, auntie. Ambition does. Maybe if you understood that you wouldn't be living like this." Before I could answer, she turned toward the door. "Anyway, we'll send you some money soon. Adel feels bad. Tell him I don't need it," I said firmly. "Tell him I raised him with values, not greed." Her heels clicked against the floor as she walked out, leaving the faint scent of perfume and arrogance behind. When the door closed, I sat down, shaking. That visit wasn't about concern. It was about dominance. Her way of reminding me who held the power now. And I realized something chilling that day. Adel wasn't just lost in greed. He was guided there. A few weeks later, I saw the true extent of what they had done. My landlord called me one morning. "Madam, the rent hasn't been paid in 2 months." I froze. "What?" "I paid in cash." "Yes." He interrupted. "But the payment was reversed. Someone accessed your joint account and blocked your standing transfer." That's when I found out. Even my rent money had been tied to the account Adel controlled. He had taken it all. Every safety net I thought I had. I called him again, my hands trembling. "Adel," I said, "I have no money. You've left me with nothing." He sounded irritated. "Amy, I told you, it's being handled. Don't call me again about this." "Handled how?" I asked, tears running down my face. "I'm behind on rent. I have medicine to buy." "What do you expect me to do?" His tone turned cold. "I can't keep bailing you out. You need to be independent." "Independent?" I choked. "You emptied my account." "No!" He shouted. "You're always playing the victim. You think guilt will make me give in? It won't. I'm not your little boy anymore." Then he hung up. The silence that followed was unbearable. I sat there for hours, clutching the phone, unable to breathe properly. That night, for the first time in my life, I cursed the heavens. Not for what I lost, but for what I created. 2 months passed. I was behind on bills. My sewing machine broke down. The pain in my joints worsened, and I couldn't afford a doctor. One afternoon, as I walked to the local pharmacy with a few crumpled notes in my hand, I saw something that stopped me in my tracks. A billboard. Right there, in the middle of the city. It was an advertisement for a new business. A&S Traders, with a smiling picture of Adel and Sarah, shaking hands with some investors. Underneath, the slogan read, "Building the future, one dream at a time." My dream. My money. Their future. I stood there in the heat, dizzy, watching people pass by. Not one of them knowing that the face on that billboard had stolen the life of the old woman staring up at it. That evening, I received a message from him. "Ami, we're doing really well now. You should be happy for me. I told you it would pay off." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. The humiliation didn't end there. Sarah's mother. "Oh, that woman," she began calling me occasionally, always with that sweet, poisoned voice. "Auntie," she'd say, "Adel is such a good husband. You raised him so well. He's doing everything for Sarah now. You must be so proud." One day, she went too far. She said, "You know, he's like a son to me too. In fact, he helps us more than you'd imagine. Some mothers are just lucky to have a generous boy like him." I wanted to scream, to tell her she was living off the blood of a widow's sacrifice. But I didn't. I just said, "Yes. Some mothers are luckier than others." And I hung up. That night I sat at my sewing table, staring at the broken machine. My fingers touched the old fabric pieces lying there, unfinished dresses, unfulfilled promises. And I said to myself, enough. I didn't know what I would do yet. But I knew I couldn't go on living as a ghost in my own story. A few days later, fate, or perhaps mercy, brought an unexpected visitor. A neighbor's daughter, Amina, came to check on me. She was studying law. She noticed the unopened bills, the eviction notice, the unpaid electricity slip. "Auntie, what happened?" she asked gently. I told her everything. Every last detail. How I signed those documents. How he took the money. How I was left with nothing. She listened quietly, her eyes hardening with every word. When I finished, she said, "Auntie, what he did isn't just immoral, it's illegal." I blinked. "Illegal?" "Yes. Even if it's a joint account, if he used your funds without consent for personal gain, there's ground for legal action. And those signatures, if he misrepresented anything, we can prove it." My heart began to race. "But he's my son." She placed her hand on mine. "And you're still a citizen with rights. Being a mother doesn't mean you stop being a person." Those words, simple as they were, felt like sunlight breaking through a long winter. I hadn't thought of myself as a person in years. Just Amy, just a title of sacrifice. She gave me the number of a legal aid office. I didn't call right away. I was scared. Scared of shaming him. Of becoming the kind of mother who fights her own child. But I couldn't deny the truth anymore. He had already stopped being a son the day he chose greed over love. The next time Adel called, I answered calmly. Amy, he said, we're expanding. I might need your ID again for a new partnership deal. It'll just be temporary. No, I said. He paused. What? I said no. Adel, no more signatures. No more lies? Amy, don't start again. You're being unreasonable. I've been blind, I replied. Not unreasonable, he laughed. You think you can stop me? Everything's already done, Amy. You're too late. Maybe, I said. But I'm still your mother. And you forgot one thing. Mothers learn from the sons who betray them. He hung up. But I wasn't trembling this time. I sat there in that quiet room, heart pounding. Realizing that for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of losing him anymore. Because I already had. That was the beginning of the end. And the beginning of my awakening. They had stolen my money, my comfort, and my peace. But now I had something they didn't expect, clarity. And soon, they would learn what it feels like when the woman you underestimated learns how to stand up again. After that call with Adel, the days began to blur into one another. Morning, evening, it all looked the same. A cup of tea I couldn't finish, a chair that stayed empty, a silence that grew louder every night. I'd always believed time could heal anything. But time doesn't heal betrayal. It just teaches you how to live with the scar. I tried to stay busy, mending old clothes for neighbors. But there was no comfort in the thread anymore. Every stitch reminded me of the life I'd sewn together. One that someone else had torn apart with a single transaction. The landlord had given me a week's notice to pay up or leave. The electricity had already been disconnected once. And my medicine, the one for my heart, was running out. I remember one evening, sitting on the cold floor with a candle burning beside me, counting the last few notes in my drawer, 470. That was all I had left. I whispered to myself, is this what motherhood becomes in the end? A receipt of everything you gave away. The tears came then, quietly, not the loud sobs of the first few days. No, these were heavier. They fell slowly, each one carrying years of love, memories, and disappointment. 2 days later, I received a call from an unknown number. Madam, a polite voice said, we're calling regarding a property document. Are you still the owner of Plot 14 in Greenview Housing? My breath caught. That small plot. It was all I had left. I had bought it 20 years ago, with Raheem's savings, hoping one day Adel would build his home there. Yes, I replied. I see. The man continued. Well, according to our records, the property has been transferred last month under the name of Anes Traders Pvt. Led. My knees gave way. I dropped the phone. They hadn't just taken my money. They had taken my land. I don't remember what happened after that. I think I fainted. When I woke up, I was lying on the floor, my heart pounding in my chest like a trapped bird. It was Adel, it had to be. He must have used those documents I signed months ago. I sat there all night, the candles burning down to nothing, replaying his words over and over. Amy, it's just for convenience. Amy, you'll get double back soon. And I realized something that chilled me to the bone. He hadn't just become greedy. He had planned this. Step by step. Like a stranger wearing my son's face. The next morning, I went to their house. Not to beg, not to fight. Just to look him in the eyes one last time and ask why. Sarah opened the door. She looked surprised, then annoyed. Auntie? What are you doing here? Where's Adel? I asked. He's busy, she said curtly. If it's about money again, I already told you. Tell him his mother is here, I said firmly. She rolled her eyes but called him. When he appeared, he looked different. Confident. Expensive. There was a shine to him that had nothing to do with light. It was pride, greed, and arrogance all polished into one. Amy? He said, forcing a smile. What's wrong now? I held up the property notice with trembling hands. You transferred my land, I said quietly. Without my consent. He glanced at the paper, then shrugged. It was necessary for the business. I told you. You didn't tell me this? I cried. You took everything from me, my money, my savings, my home, now this. He raised his voice. Stop dramatizing, Amy. You're embarrassing yourself. Sarah crossed her arms, smirking. You should be proud, Auntie. Your son's becoming a real businessman. I turned to Adil, my voice breaking. You think this is success? Stealing from your own mother. He slammed his fist on the table. I didn't steal. I earned it. Everything I have, I built myself. You don't understand the world anymore. I took a shaky breath. I understand enough. I understand that you've lost your soul. He looked away. Jaw tight. Sarah laughed lightly. You always make everything about emotions. Maybe that's why you're still poor. Her words stung like acid. I could feel my heart pounding, my face burning with humiliation. Without another word, I turned to leave. But as I reached the door, Adil said something I'll never forget. Don't come here again, Ami. You're making things difficult. If you keep interfering, you'll regret it. I stopped. For a long moment, I didn't move. Then I turned back slowly and said, I already do, Adil. I already regret everything, and I walked away. The world outside looked blurry as I stepped into the sunlight. My legs felt weak, my eyes burned. I wanted to scream, to curse, to tear at the sky. But I didn't. I just walked. Every step felt like walking away from the ghost of the boy I once loved. When I reached home, I locked the door and collapsed on the floor. My chest hurt, a sharp, suffocating pain. I clutched my heart, gasping, until the room spun and everything went dark. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. A nurse stood beside me, checking the monitor. You had a mild cardiac episode, she said gently. You need rest, madam. No stress. No stress. How do you rest when your own blood has poisoned your peace? Amina was there too. She looked worried but determined. Auntie, she said softly, this has gone too far. You can't stay silent anymore. I looked away. He's my son. And you're a human being, she replied. He's broken the law. He's stolen from you. He's exploited your trust. Do you think a stranger would have hurt you worse than this? I didn't answer. But her words echoed in my mind long after she left. When I was discharged 2 days later, I returned to my flat, or what was left of it. The landlord had changed the locks. My belongings were piled outside in boxes: clothes, utensils, the sewing machine. Madam, I told you, he said apologetically. I can't wait forever. I'm sorry. I nodded. I couldn't blame him. I sat on the pavement, next to my boxes, watching people walk by. Nobody stopped. Nobody asked. I was invisible now. Just another old woman the world had forgotten. As the sun went down, a drizzle began. The papers in my hand grew damp, ink bleeding into the rain. That was my lowest moment. The moment when everything inside me broke, quietly and completely. I looked up at the sky and whispered, Ya Allah, what did I do wrong? Was I too kind? Too trusting? Why did you give me a son if he was meant to destroy me? The rain fell harder, washing away the tears I didn't have strength to wipe. That night, I slept on Amina's couch. She made me soup, covered me with a blanket and said, You're safe here, Auntie. Tomorrow, we'll fix this. But I couldn't sleep. Because I didn't know how to fix a broken soul, his or mine. In the quiet of the night, I replayed Adil's words. You'll regret it. And I thought to myself, no, Adil. The only thing I regret is that I didn't see who you were becoming sooner. And in that moment of silence, something changed inside me. It wasn't anger. It wasn't grief. It was something deeper, resolve. For the first time in months, I felt my heartbeat steady. I realized I had spent my whole life protecting him from consequences. But perhaps, the only way to save what was left of myself was to let justice do what a mother's forgiveness never could. The next morning, I went with Amina to the legal aid office. My hands were still trembling when I held the file of documents, account statements, property papers, and the bank record showing the transfer. The lawyer, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, listened carefully. When I finished, he said, Madam, this is not just unethical, it's criminal misappropriation of funds. We can file a case. I hesitated. He's my only son. He nodded. Then perhaps this is the only way to teach him what it truly means to be a son. For the first time in a long while, someone spoke to me not as a fragile old woman, but as a person who still had power. That night, as I sat by the window of Amina's small apartment, watching the streetlights flicker, I whispered to myself. He took everything. Now I will take back my name. And in that whisper, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Because I finally understood. Sometimes love means holding on. And sometimes, love means letting justice speak where forgiveness has failed. That was the night I decided to fight. Not for revenge. Not yet. But for the dignity he thought he could buy with my silence. The next morning began with light. Soft, golden, and almost apologetic. Slipping through the curtains of Amina's apartment. For the first time in months, I didn't wake up with a jolt of panic. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of the kettle in the kitchen and the distant honk of buses on the road. There was a strange calm inside me. Not because the pain had faded, but because it had settled, like ashes after a fire. Amina entered with 2 cups of tea. She smiled gently. "You slept well," I nodded. "Better than I have in years." We sat quietly for a while. Then I said, "Mina, I'm going to fight him." Her eyes widened slightly. "Are you sure?" "I am," I said. "Not because I want to see him punished, but because I need to remember that I still exist. That I am not just a mistake someone can erase." Amina reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Then let's start." That day marked the beginning of my transformation. We visited the legal aid office again. This time, I walked in not as a grieving mother, but as a woman seeking justice. The lawyer, Mr. Khalid, greeted me warmly. He had already reviewed the documents. "Your son transferred your property and bank funds under forged consent," he said. "It's a clear case of fraud. But it will be complicated." "Complicated how?" I asked. "Well," he explained, "he used your signatures, and if they were notarized, it'll take time to prove you were deceived. We'll need witnesses, records of your illness, and evidence of coercion." Amina spoke up. "She has the hospital documents, the text messages, and even the call logs." Mr. Khalid nodded. "Good. That will help." He paused, then said something that stayed with me. "Madam, this will not be easy. He will fight back. He will try to shame you, discredit you, silence you. Are you ready for that?" I looked at him steadily. "He's already taken everything from me. What more can he silence?" He smiled faintly. "Then you're stronger than most." The following weeks passed in a blur of papers, signatures, and statements. Every day I'd walk to the courthouse with Amina, her arm linked in mine, my scarf fluttering in the dusty air. The first time I saw my name printed on the petition, Plaintiff Shabana Rahim, I felt something rise in my chest, a small spark of pride. A name I had almost forgotten now carried the weight of courage. At night, I'd sit by the window, writing everything I remembered. The phone calls, the forged documents, the words he said. I wrote them not out of anger, but to free myself from the burden of silence. Each word felt like a wound being cleaned, painful, but necessary to heal. One afternoon, while we were filing an affidavit, I saw him again. Adil, he walked into the courthouse, flanked by a lawyer in a navy blue suit. He looked shocked when he saw me, as if he had never expected I'd stand against him. "Amy," he said quietly, approaching. "What are you doing?" I didn't look away. "Defending what's mine." He frowned. "You didn't have to do this publicly. We could have talked." "Talk." I interrupted. "I begged you to talk. You chose to deceive." His lawyer stepped forward. "Madam, perhaps we can settle this amicably." "There's no need for drama." I looked at him calmly. "Drama is what happens when a mother weeps on the street with her belongings in boxes. Justice is what happens after." Adil's face hardened. "So you've turned against me. Your own son." "No," I said softly. "You turned away long before I did." For a moment, his eyes faltered. Just a flicker of guilt. But then Sarah appeared behind him, perfectly dressed, perfectly indifferent. She smirked. "You're really doing this, Auntie?" "Suing your own blood," I smiled faintly. "Yes. And I hope someday you'll learn what real blood means." Then I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard Sarah whisper something to him. But I didn't care. For the first time in years, my steps didn't tremble. The first hearing was brief, just procedural. But sitting in that courtroom, under the heavy wooden ceiling, and the smell of old paper and ink, I felt something sacred. It wasn't revenge, it was reclaiming my voice. When the judge read my statement aloud, the plaintiff alleges financial and emotional exploitation by her son. The words echoed through the hall like a confession of truth, and as everyone listened, I realized the shame I had carried was never mine to begin with. Weeks turned into months. The case drew quiet attention. Neighbors whispered. Some pitied me, some judged me. But I had stopped caring about whispers. Every day, I grew a little stronger. I started stitching again, not for money, but for peace. Each line of thread became a silent prayer. Amina often said, "You've changed, Auntie. You look lighter." And maybe she was right. When you stop protecting your pain and start protecting your worth, everything inside you begins to breathe again. Then one day, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived. No sender name. Just a plain envelope with my name in neat handwriting. Inside was a note: "Amy, please stop this. I know I made mistakes. But this case will ruin me. Let's meet. Just once. Please." Adel, my heart trembled reading it. For a long time, I just stared at his handwriting, the same hand that once scribbled, "Love you, Amy," on birthday cards when he was 10. Amina was furious when she saw it. "He's trying to manipulate you again, don't go." But I needed closure. Not as a mother, as a human being. So I agreed to meet him, in a public cafe. He arrived first, wearing a crisp white shirt, eyes hidden behind sunglasses. When he saw me, he removed them slowly, revealing eyes that were tired, almost haunted. For a moment, we just sat in silence. Then he said softly, "You really went through with it?" "Yes," I replied. He sighed. "Do you know what this will do to my reputation? To my business?" I leaned forward. "Do you know what you did to mine? To my soul?" He looked away. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." "Then why didn't you stop?" He hesitated. I thought I could fix it before you found out. I just needed time." I stared at him, searching for the boy I once knew. But all I saw was a man trapped in his own lies. "Adel," I said quietly, "you took my home, my savings, my peace. But the cruelest thing you did was make me doubt myself." He swallowed hard. "Amy, please. I'll return the money. I'll give you everything back. Just withdraw the case." I shook my head. "It's not about the money anymore. It's about truth." His voice rose. "You'll destroy me." I looked at him sadly. "No, Adel. You destroyed yourself." I stood up, adjusting my scarf. Before leaving, I placed a small envelope on the table. Inside was a photograph. The one of him as a child, smiling, holding my hand. "Keep it," I said. "Maybe someday you'll remember who you were before greed made you forget love." And I walked away. The trial continued. And as evidence came forward, the forged signatures, the fake transactions, the truth unfolded like a slow sunrise. Adel's lawyer tried to argue coercion, confusion, mental instability. But the facts were undeniable. When the judge finally announced the verdict, property restored, compensation ordered, and a warning issued for criminal breach of trust, I felt nothing. Not joy, not triumph, just silence. The kind of silence that comes after a storm when the wind has finally spent itself. As I stepped out of the courtroom, the sunlight hit my face. I closed my eyes and breathed. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of tomorrow. That evening, I went to the seaside, a place I hadn't visited since Rahim passed. The waves were calm, the air salty and soft. I stood barefoot on the sand, watching the horizon melt into gold. I thought of Adel, of what he had become and what I had lost. And then, quietly, I forgave him. Not because he deserved it, but because I deserved peace. I whispered into the wind, "Ya Allah, I leave him to you. I've done my part." A seagull flew overhead, and I smiled faintly. Some wounds don't need revenge. They just need closure. Later that night, as I sat with Amina drinking tea, she asked, "Do you think he'll ever come back?" I smiled softly. "Maybe. But if he does, he won't find the same woman waiting." She laughed gently. "You're stronger now." I looked out the window at the moonlight brushing over the rooftops. "No," I said. "I'm finally whole." And as the camera would fade on that final shot, the mother sitting by the window, a calm smile on her face, the moonlight soft on her hands, Her voiceover would whisper the final line. I thought motherhood ended when he stopped needing me. But I was wrong. It began the moment I started needing myself. After the verdict, the world grew strangely quiet. People who had avoided me before now stopped by with forced smiles, murmuring, "You were brave. Shabana, we're proud of you." I'd nod politely, pour them tea, and listen to their pity disguised as praise. But I didn't need their validation. The truth had already spoken, loud and clear, in a courtroom filled with strangers. Adil had been ordered to return everything he took. The house, the funds, and even pay damages for emotional and financial exploitation. The judge's words still echoed in my mind. A son's duty is not ownership, it is care. What this court sees is not just theft of wealth, but theft of trust. When the gavel struck, it didn't sound like punishment. It sounded like freedom. But freedom, as I soon learned, carries its own kind of loneliness. Adil tried to call me after the verdict. Several times. I didn't answer. Not out of hatred, but because I had nothing left to say. He came to the house once, a week after the papers were signed. Amina saw him first, standing by the gate, unshaven, exhausted. "Should I tell him to leave?" she whispered. I thought for a moment, then said quietly, "No. Let him come." He entered the courtyard slowly, his steps hesitant, his eyes darting around as if seeing the house for the first time. It had changed, not much in color or shape, but in presence. It no longer felt like his house. It was mine again, full of quiet, humble strength. He stopped a few feet away from me. "Ami," he said, his voice cracked and small. I don't know where to begin. I studied his face. The same boy who once clung to my hand while crossing the street, now standing like a stranger seeking mercy. "Begin," I said calmly. "With the truth." He swallowed hard. "I was stupid. I let Sarah and her mother get inside my head. They said I was weak, that I'd never have a future if I kept giving you everything. They convinced me that your savings were mine. That I deserved it after all you'd spent on me." He paused, lowering his head. "I don't even know who I was anymore. I thought I was doing what a man should do. Provide for his family. But I ended up stealing from my own." I listened silently. The tea beside me had gone cold, but I didn't move. "Do you know what I missed most?" he continued, voice trembling. "You. I missed you, Ami. I thought I could live without you, but I can't. I lost my job, my wife left, her mother blames me, and I have nothing." For the first time, he began to cry. Not loudly, not dramatically, but the quiet kind of crying that comes from deep exhaustion. I wanted to reach out, but something inside me stopped. Not anger, not pride, just memory, of every night I had cried in silence while he lived like I had never existed. "Adil," I said softly, "what do you want from me now?" He looked up, tears glistening. "Forgive me. Please." Forgiveness. Such a beautiful, cruel word. Everyone wants it. Few understand what it costs. "I already forgave you," I said. "Long before you asked. But forgiveness doesn't mean I forget. It means I let go, so I can live." He nodded slowly, wiping his eyes. "I don't expect you to trust me again," he whispered. "But I had to tell you the truth." "Good," I said gently. "Then start your life from there. Not from lies." He left quietly. And I thought that would be the end. But life has its own way of revealing lessons. Slowly, painfully, and completely. 2 months later, I received a letter from the same court. Adil had been caught in another fraud case. This time with his business partners. He had tried to forge documents again, but the pattern was too obvious. The police had used my case as reference. He was arrested. When I heard the news, I didn't cry. I just sat in silence, holding my rosary. Amina placed her hand on my shoulder. "Do you want to visit him?" I thought for a long time before answering. "Yes," I said finally. Not as his victim. As his mother. The jail was cold, gray, and smelled faintly of damp stone. When they brought him to the visiting area, he looked smaller. Not physically, but in spirit. His arrogance had drained away. He sat across the glass divider, eyes hollow. "Ami," he whispered. I lifted the phone receiver. "Adil. I didn't want you to see me like this." "Then why did you call?" "Because you're the only one who ever shows up when I fall." He gave a broken laugh. Sarah didn't even visit. Her mother said I deserve this. Maybe you do, I said quietly. But you also deserve a chance to learn from it. He looked at me in disbelief. You're not angry, I smiled faintly. I was. For a long time. But anger is a prison too. I won't live there anymore. He lowered his head. I wish I could start over. You can, I said gently. But you'll have to build it with honesty this time. Even if you start with nothing, start clean. Tears filled his eyes again. Will you ever let me come home? I took a deep breath. When you've made peace with yourself, the door will be open. Until then, it's better for both of us to live with truth, even if it's far apart. He nodded slowly. I understand. When I stood to leave, I pressed my hand to the glass. He placed his against it, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw the boy he used to be. Then I walked away, not with sorrow, but with peace. Months passed. The garden behind my house began to bloom again. I had started planting flowers there after the verdict, lilies, jasmine, and marigolds. I told myself that each seed was a promise to heal. Every morning, I'd water them, whispering small prayers under my breath. Neighbors would pass by and smile. You've made this house alive again, Shabana. I'd smile back. No. It made me alive again. One afternoon, I received another letter. This one was written in Adil's handwriting, but neater, steadier. Ami, I know I don't deserve much after all I've done. But I've been attending counseling in prison. They made me write letters. Not to ask forgiveness, but to face the truth of what I've done. I realize now I didn't just steal your money. I stole your faith. I stole the mother who believed her son would protect her. I can't undo that, but I can change who I am from here. When I get out, I want to start over, even if it's from nothing. If you'll let me, I'd like to work for you. Not as your son, as your helper. Love always, Adil. I read it twice, then folded it neatly. I didn't cry. But something inside me softened. The way frost melts when sunlight touches it. Weeks turned to months, and one morning I got a call. He was being released on parole for good behavior. Amina was with me that day. She asked, "Will you bring him back?" I smiled quietly. Let's see who he is now. When Adil came home, he stood by the gate again. Only this time, without pride, without pretense. He carried nothing but a small bag and a single folded paper in his pocket. His discharge note. He looked thinner, older, but his eyes, they were different. Calmer. "Assalamu alaikum, Ami," he said. I returned the greeting softly. He hesitated, then said, "May I come in?" I nodded. He stepped inside, removed his shoes, and quietly sat on the veranda floor, the same spot where he once laughed with Sarah, mocking me for being too old-fashioned. Now he sat humbly, silently. After a long pause, he said, "I don't expect to stay here. I just wanted to see the flowers." I smiled faintly. "They've been waiting for you." He looked up in surprise. I gestured toward the garden, rows of bright blossoms swaying gently in the afternoon breeze. "Every flower here grew from a broken seed," I said. "But look at them now, standing tall, beautiful, alive." He followed my gaze, eyes filling again. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for everything." "I know," I said gently. "Now prove it, not to me, but to yourself." He nodded slowly. Over the next few weeks, he began to visit often. He'd help with repairs, fetch groceries, even cook tea. He never asked for forgiveness again. And I never reminded him of his crimes. Our conversations were short, simple, and peaceful. And in those silences, something delicate began to grow again. Not trust, not yet, but understanding. One evening, as we sat in the courtyard watching the sunset, he said quietly, "Do you ever regret taking me to court?" I thought for a moment. "No," I said softly. "Because I wasn't punishing you. I was teaching you. The lesson your father would have wanted you to learn, that love without respect is not love at all." He nodded. "I understand that now." We sat in silence for a while. The sky was painted in gold and violet, and the air smelled of jasmine. Then he said something that took me by surprise. "Ami, can I stay tonight? Not because I have nowhere to go, but because I want to remember what peace feels like." I smiled gently. "Yes, Beta. You can." That night, As I heard him pray in the next room, whispering verses I hadn't heard him recite in years, I felt a quiet tear slide down my cheek. Not from sadness, from gratitude. Maybe Allah had returned my son, not the boy who betrayed me, but the man who finally found his soul. And in that moment, I realized something profound. Revenge had never been my victory. My real revenge was living well, in truth, dignity, and peace, while letting life itself teach him the lessons I no longer needed to. Because time, my dear, is the greatest teacher. And sometimes, the only justice worth having is the one that humbles the heart. That was the night I slept deeply, without fear, without memory. Outside, the moonlight washed over the garden, and the wind carried the scent of new beginnings. And in my dreams, I saw Rahim again, smiling softly saying, "You did well, Shabana. You did well. The house feels quiet now, not lonely, but peaceful. The kind of silence that doesn't ache anymore. You see, there's a difference between silence that hurts and silence that heals." Mine finally became the second kind. I often sit on the back porch these days, watching the sun go down behind the neem tree. The air carries a sweetness I never noticed before. Maybe because my heart isn't drowning anymore. The pain that once made me tremble has softened into something almost gentle, like a scar that no longer bleeds. After the trial ended and justice was served, I withdrew the little I had left, sold the house that held too many ghosts, and moved into a small cottage by the edge of town. It's nothing grand. Just 2 rooms, a kitchen, and a garden that I tend myself. But it's mine. Completely mine. No one can take it from me. No one can lie their way into it. Sometimes I think about Armin. About the little boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard, proudly saying, "Look, Mama! I picked you flowers." I wonder where that child went. The one with innocent eyes and sticky fingers from stolen candy. Because the man who betrayed me wasn't my son. He was someone else entirely, someone molded by greed, by pride, by a woman who saw my kindness as weakness. And yet, I don't hate him. Not anymore. Hate is heavy. It eats you from the inside. I carried it long enough to know it doesn't hurt the person who wronged you. It only poisons your own soul. So one morning, I wrote him a letter. Not to forgive what he did, but to free myself from it. "Armin," I wrote, "I loved you more than I loved myself. You broke my trust, but you can't break my spirit. I don't wish you pain, only understanding. One day, when life shows you the mirror of your actions, I hope you'll have the courage to look. Until then, I'll be here. Not waiting, but living." I never mailed it. I burned it under the same neem tree where I used to watch him play. The ashes flew up, and I swear for the first time in years, I breathed without guilt. People in town often ask how I found the strength to fight back. I tell them, strength doesn't come all at once. It comes in whispers. The moment you stop believing their lies, the moment you choose peace over fear, the moment you say no for the first time. Every act of survival begins quietly. I also started volunteering at a small women's center. You'd be surprised how many mothers sit across from me, trembling, saying, "He's my son. I can't believe he'd do this." And I hold their hands and tell them gently, "Believe it, my dear. Believe it, and still love yourself, because love for them should never mean cruelty for yourself." One evening, about a year after everything, I was closing up my garden when I saw a familiar car slow down outside my gate. My heart skipped, not from fear, but from something old and tired inside me. The car door opened, and out stepped Armin. He looked thinner, older, like the world had finally caught up to him. His eyes searched for mine, uncertain, ashamed. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The wind rustled between us, carrying years of words unsaid. "Mama," he finally whispered, "I lost everything." I nodded slowly. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find what matters. He looked down, his voice trembling. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to see you." There was a time I would have begged for that. Would have melted. Would have taken him back no matter what. But that time had passed. I'd learned that love doesn't mean surrender. "You've seen me now," I said softly. "Take care of yourself." He looked as if he wanted to say more, but couldn't. Tears welled in his eyes. For the first time, I saw the boy again, lost inside the man. He nodded, stepped back, and drove away. And as I watched the dust trail behind his car fade into the dusk, I didn't cry, I prayed. God, guide him. But don't let me lose myself again. That night, I slept peacefully, really slept. No nightmares, no anger. Just the sound of rain tapping against my window and the rhythm of my own steady breathing. When I woke up, the world felt new. I brewed my tea, stepped outside, and smiled at the sky. Freedom, I realized, isn't loud. It's quiet, soft, and sacred. It's the sound of your own heart no longer breaking. Now, when I see my reflection in the mirror, I don't see the woman who was betrayed or humiliated. I see someone who survived, who rebuilt her life piece by piece. My wrinkles tell stories of laughter and loss. My hands, once trembling from fear, now plant seeds in the soil and nurture life again. And every evening, as I light my little oil lamp by the window, I whisper a prayer for all the mothers who still cry in silence. May they remember. I say, that love should not demand destruction. That kindness is not weakness. And that no one, not even your own blood, has the right to steal your dignity. I've learned that money can be earned again. Trust can be rebuilt, but only within yourself. And revenge. True revenge isn't about making them suffer. It's about becoming untouchable by their cruelty. It's living well, loving yourself, and smiling again despite everything they tried to break, because peace is the sweetest revenge of all. So now, when I sit under my neem tree at sunset, I no longer ask, why me? I simply thank God for the lesson, for the strength, for the freedom I never thought I'd taste again. And I say to myself, softly, you did it. You survived what was meant to destroy you. A true love cannot be bought, and freedom is worth any price. Sometimes the people we raise become our teachers, teaching us through pain what self-respect really means. And forgiveness, my dear, forgiveness is not for them. It's for you. To finally breathe again. And you, my dear, what would you have done in my place? Would you forgive, or would you walk away? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your heart.